Boot sequence initiated. Cogitator recovery unit. Designation Psi. Calculus 881. Error. Mnemonic fragmentation across 73% of primary data core. Temporal stamp corruption detected. Cross-referencing against Imperial Naval Registry. Vessel identified as the Veritas Eterna, Dictator-class bulk freighter, commercial charter, registered out of Port Sanctus, Calixis sector adjacency. Manifest lists 4,200 souls aboard at time of departure. Transit route filed with the Navis Nobilite for standard warp passage. Mandeville Point Sigma Creche to Mandeville. Point Aurochs IV. Estimated transit duration 6 weeks standard. Vessel failed to arrive at Aurochs IV. Vessel failed to arrive at any registered Imperial port. Classification updated. Lost with all hands. Designation amended to Vox-Ghost. Category Vermilion. Audio log fragment recovered from a single data slate. Adrift in the Aurochs system void. Approximately 14 standard months after projected arrival. Slate was fused partially to a section of hull plating measuring 2 meters by 3 meters. No other wreckage was recovered. No bodies were recovered. The data slate contained a single audio file, recorded in compressed low-band format consistent with personal Vox capture equipment. Speaker tentatively identified as Engine Rating 3rd Class. Marin Coyle. Indentured crew. Assigned to the Veritas Eterna's lower Engineerium deck. Authenticity cannot be verified. Content has been flagged by the Ordo Hereticus as potentially hazardous to unshielded minds. Listener discretion is advised. Praise the Omnicia. Let the machine god preserve what was spoken. Playback commencing. My name is Marin Coyle. Engine rating 3rd class aboard the Veritas Eterna. Indentured, like everyone else down in the guts of the ship. Born into the debt, and like to die in it. I am recording this because I do not think anyone is coming for us. I do not think anyone knows we are here. And I want someone, anyone, even if it is only a cogitator sifting through wreckage 100 years from now, to know what happened. To know that I tried. I am in Geller Field, Generator Chamber 7. It is one of 3 redundant chambers on the lower port side, buried deep in the ship's belly, beneath the main Engineerium, beneath the plasma conduit junctions, beneath everything. The walls are bare metal, sweating condensation that freezes into a thin crust of ice almost as soon as it forms. The chamber is roughly 4 meters by 6, and most of that space is taken up by the generator itself. A column of iron and copper and blessed circuitry that runs from floor to ceiling, wrapped in prayer seals and machine oil and the faded parchment of 100 maintenance benedictions. It hums. That hum is the only thing keeping us alive. It is the only thing keeping anything on this ship real. I have sealed the blast door. I sealed it with my override key, the one Engen Volta gave me for emergencies, and then I broke the key off in the lock and hammered the stub flat with a wrench. Nobody is opening that door from the outside, and I am not opening it from the inside. Not for anyone. Not for anything. I need to tell this in order. I need to try. The Veritas Eterna was a freighter. Bulk cargo, mostly. We hauled processed ore, machine parts, sealed crates that the officers said came from the Mechanicus and that we were not to touch or question. 4,000 crew, give or take. Most of us were ratings. You would not have noticed us. We lived in the lower decks where the light was bad and the air tasted like iron filings and recycled sweat. We ate our ration gruel, and we did our shifts, and we prayed to the Emperor at the appointed hours, because that is what you do. And it did not matter whether you believed, because belief was not optional. It was regulation. I worked the Immaterium. My job was monitoring coolant flow to the secondary plasma manifolds, a task so tedious and so critical that it required a human being instead of a servitor, because servitors, as Engensir Volta used to say, do not have the survival instinct to notice when something is about to go catastrophically wrong. Servitors just keep turning their wrenches until the plasma cooks them inside their own augmetics. A human, at least, has the good sense to be afraid. I was good at being afraid. It is, as it turns out, my finest quality. We entered the warp 6 weeks ago, or what I think was 6 weeks ago. Time is difficult. The chronometers in this chamber stopped working on what I believe was the 3rd day, and since then, I have been measuring time by the rhythm of my own breathing and the slow, agonizing depletion of the generator's fuel reserves. The gauge says 14%. It said 17% when I last checked, and that was, I think, several hours ago. Perhaps longer, perhaps less. I do not sleep anymore. Not truly. I close my eyes and I drift into something that is not rest. And I hear things in that half-state. Things that jolt me back to full alertness, with my heart slamming against my ribs like a fist, trying to punch through from the inside. The transit was supposed to be routine. 6 weeks through the Immaterium, following a stable corridor that the navigators had charted a dozen times before. Our navigator, Mistress Solène, she was old, experienced. She had threaded passages through warp storms that would have swallowed lesser vessels. She sat up in her sanctum at the top of the ship, behind her sealed doors, and she looked into the warp with that third eye of hers, and she guided us. We trusted her. We did not have a choice, but we also trusted her, and there is a difference. 3 days into transit, the ship lurched. I have felt warp turbulence before. Every Voidborn has. It is like sailing through a storm on an ocean you cannot see, and the waves are not made of water, but of something that your mind refuses to process. And the ship groans and shudders, and the lights flicker, and you grip whatever is bolted down and you pray. It passes. It always passes. This did not pass. The lurch was followed by a sound I had never heard before, a deep, resonant boom that seemed to come from everywhere at once, from the hull, from the walls, from the deck plates beneath my feet. It was not mechanical. It was not the sound of metal under stress or plasma venting or a conduit rupturing. It was like something immensely large had struck the outside of the ship with an open palm. The entire vessel rang like a bell. Then the engines died. Not a gradual wind down, not a controlled shutdown. They simply stopped. One moment, the constant vibration that every crew member feels in their bones from the day they are born aboard a void ship was there, and the next it was gone. And the silence that replaced it was the most terrifying thing I had ever experienced. Up to that point. I was in the Engineerium when it happened. There were 30 of us on shift. I remember the lights going out. The brief, breathless darkness before the emergency lumens kicked in, painting everything in dull red. I remember Bosun Halleck shouting for order, his voice cutting through the babble of frightened ratings like a blade. I remember the Vox speakers crackling with panicked chatter from every deck, voices overlapping, officers demanding status reports that nobody could give. And then, beneath all of it, so faint that I thought I was imagining it, I heard the hull moan. Not creak, not groan, moan, as if the metal itself was in pain, as if something was pressing against it from the outside, slowly, steadily, with a pressure that had no physical source. In the warp, there is no vacuum. There is no void. There is something else, something that the navigators and the tech priests and the chaplains all have different names for, but which amounts to the same thing. The stuff of nightmares made manifest. The raw, churning madness of a billion souls screaming into eternity. And it was pressing against our hull like the ocean presses against a submersible that is sunk too deep. The Geller field was still active. That was the only reason we were still alive, still sane, still ourselves. The field generators were running on their own power reserves, independent of the main plasma reactors. Praise the Omnissiah for that small mercy. But Engineer Volta, when she interfaced with the generator's machine spirit, her face went the color of old parchment. I had never seen a tech priest look afraid before. Half her face was augmetic. The left eye replaced with a red-lit optical implant. The jaw reinforced with adamantine plating, but the human half, the right side, the side that still had skin and muscle and the capacity for expression. That half looked like a woman who had just been told the exact hour of her death. The field was holding, but the generators were not designed to run indefinitely without the main reactor feeding them supplemental power. They had reserves. Weeks of reserves if managed carefully. But Volta said the warp was thick here, unusually thick, and the generators were drawing harder than they should have been, burning through fuel at a rate that turned weeks into days. We tried to restart the engines. Emperor knows we tried. The tech priests performed their rites, chanting Binharic hymns, and anointing the reactor manifolds with sacred oils. The senior engineers ran diagnostic after diagnostic. Everything came back clean. The reactor was intact. The fuel reserves were adequate. The plasma conduits were undamaged. There was no mechanical reason the engines should not fire. But when they initiated the ignition sequence, nothing happened. The reactor sat there, cold and dead, like a heart that simply refused to beat. Volta said the machine spirit was afraid. I did not know that was possible. I did not know machines could feel fear. But she laid her augmetic hand against the reactor housing and closed her eyes and communed with the spirit within. And when she opened them again, she said. In that flat monotone the tech priests use when they are relaying data rather than speaking as humans, she said, "It will not wake. It knows what is outside. It will not wake." That was the moment the first people started to panic. The officers maintained order for a time. Captain Dren addressed the crew over the shipwide Vox, told us the situation was being assessed, told us the navigator was working to find a way to translate back into real space, told us to maintain our posts and our prayers. His voice was steady. I admired that. I think he was already terrified, but his voice was steady, and sometimes that is enough. The moaning got louder on the second day. Not dramatically, not all at once, just a slow, creeping increase, like a tide coming in. And it was joined by other sounds. Tapping, faint and irregular, against the outer hull, like fingernails on metal. Like something was walking along the outside of the ship, testing, probing, looking for a way in. The ratings on the outer hull maintenance corridors reported frost forming on the walls. Not the normal condensation frost of a poorly insulated deck, but thick, crystalline frost that spread in patterns, in spirals and whorls that, if you looked at them too long, seemed to form shapes. Faces, mouths, open, screaming mouths. I stopped looking at the frost early. Some did not. Rating Pell, who bunked 3 hammocks down from mine, she spent an hour staring at a frost pattern on the corridor wall outside the Engineerium. When Bosun Halleck found her, she was scratching at it with her bare fingers, her nails torn and bloody, whispering a name over and over, a name none of us recognized. Halleck pulled her away, and she looked at him with eyes that were perfectly lucid, perfectly clear. And she said, "They know my mother's name. How do they know my mother's name?" Pell was confined to her quarters. She was not the last. By the 3rd day, the navigator was dead. We did not learn the details immediately. The officers kept it quiet for as long as they could, but rumors spread fast on a ship with 4,000 frightened souls and nothing to do but wait and listen to the sounds outside the hull. Mistress Solène had opened her warp eye one final time, trying to chart a course, trying to find a current in the Immaterium that might carry us toward real space. What she saw, no one knows. Her sanctum guards found her slumped in her throne, her 3rd eye still open, weeping blood that was not red, but black, thick and viscous as tar. The guards who looked into that eye before they thought to cover it were taken to the Medici Bay. I was told they did not stop screaming for 6 hours. When they finally fell silent, it was not because they had calmed down. Without the navigator, we could not steer. Without the engines, we could not move. The Veritas Aeterna was dead in the water, a crippled vessel adrift in the most hostile sea in existence, and our only protection was a thinning energy field powered by generators that were slowly, inexorably running dry. I am trying to keep this in order. I am trying to be clear. The cold makes it hard to think. My fingers are numb, and the data slate screen flickers and the generator hums. And sometimes the hum wavers, dips, and my heart stops until it steadies again. On the 4th day, people started hearing voices. Not the moaning, not the tapping. Voices, human voices, coming from the hull itself, from the walls, filtering through the metal like whispers through a closed door. They were faint at first, indistinct, just the cadence and rhythm of speech without the words. But they got clearer. And the terrible thing, the thing that made strong men weep and faithful women claw at their own ears, was that the voices were familiar. Rating Gent heard his dead brother. Ensign Corva heard her daughter, the one she had left behind on Port Sanctus. 6 years old and crying at the dockside. Bosun Halleck heard, and this is what broke him, I think. Halleck heard his own voice, speaking words he had not yet said, describing things he had not yet seen. The astropath, old blind Caius, who sat in his shielded chamber on Deck 7 and relayed our messages to the stars. He sent a warning over the Vox. "Do not listen," he said. His voice was ragged, strained, the voice of a man carrying a weight too heavy for his frame. "Do not listen to the voices. They are not your loved ones. They are not your memories. They are the things in the warp, the hungry things, and they are wearing the faces of everything you have ever loved, because love is the easiest door to open. Shut your ears. Say your prayers. Do not listen." Some listened anyway. Humans are weak. We are built to respond to the voices of the people we love. It is not a choice. It is what we are. By the 5th day, the astropath was dead too. He burned out, they said. The pressure of the warp against his psychic defenses was too great, and his mind broke like a dam, and the backwash killed him, and every soul within 30 meters of his chamber. 16 people died with him, their brains boiling inside their skulls, their eyes bursting, their mouths locked open in silent screams. The chair surgeon who examined the bodies said their expressions were not of pain but of ecstasy, as if they had seen something beautiful in the instant before it destroyed them. I do not think it was beautiful. I think the warp showed them what it wanted them to see, and what it wanted them to see was a door, wide open, inviting them through. And they went through, and what was on the other side ate them. On the 6th day, the ship went mad. I cannot describe it fully. I do not have the words, and even if I did, I think the words themselves would be dangerous. Something changed in the ship. The air tasted different, metallic and sweet, like blood mixed with honey. The emergency lumens shifted color, flickering between red and a deep bruised violet that had no place in any spectrum I know. The frost on the walls began to move slowly, like something alive, spreading and retreating in rhythms that almost matched a heartbeat. And the sounds from outside. Emperor preserve me. The sounds. The moaning was gone, replaced by something worse. A wet sound. A dragging, sliding sound, like something vast and boneless was pressing itself against the hull, moving along it, wrapping around the ship the way a serpent wraps around its prey. I heard it in the Engineerium, heard it moving overhead, heard it pause directly above the compartment where I was working. And I swear on the golden throne that I felt something look at me through 6 inches of reinforced plasteel. Not see me. Look at me. There is a difference. I felt it consider me. I felt it taste my fear. Halleck ordered the engineering sealed. We had 40 crew in the main engineering bay, and another 20 spread across the subsidiary chambers. Volta was working on the Geller generators, trying to coax more power from them, talking to the machine spirits in her half-human, half-bin-Herrick cant. Halleck was organizing the crew into watches, keeping people busy, keeping them focused. He was a good man, Halleck. He had a face like a clenched fist and a voice like a bulkhead door slamming. And he was terrified down to his marrow. But he kept moving, kept ordering, kept being the thing that everyone else could cling to when the ship shuddered and the lights dipped and the wet sliding sound passed overhead. But people were disappearing. Not from the Immaterium, from everywhere else. The Vox reports came in sporadically, broken and static-laced. Deck 9, 14 crew, unaccounted for. Deck 4, an entire watch shift gone, their posts abandoned, their tools left where they lay. The cargo holds, where 600 ratings had been sheltering, went silent. Just silent. One moment, the Vox was carrying the sound of prayers and weeping, and Bosun Kresh trying to maintain order, and the next, nothing. Not static, not a cut signal, nothing. The sound of 400 voices stopping at once. I try not to think about what that silence means. I try very hard. On the 7th day, Engine Seer Volta came to me. I was in the subsidiary generator chamber. Chamber 7. This chamber. The one I am in now. I was monitoring the coolant levels because the generators were overheating, drawing too hard against a warp that was pressing tighter and tighter against the field, like a fist closing around a candle flame. Volta came in alone, her red robes stained with oil and frost and something darker, and she closed the door behind her and she looked at me with her one human eye and she said, "Coil, the field is failing." I said, "I know." I had been watching the gauges. The power output was dropping, percentage point by percentage point, and the generators were running hot, too hot. The machine spirits inside them screaming in their own silicon language. Volta said, "The other chambers are already dark. Generators 1 through 4 failed in the night. 5 and 6 are running on emergency reserves and will be dead within hours. This chamber, Chamber 7, is the strongest. It has its own independent fuel cell. It can run for..." She paused, calculating perhaps 6 more days, if managed with extreme care. I asked her what she wanted me to do. She handed me her override key, the one that controlled the chamber's blast door, a door rated to withstand a direct hit from a macro cannon. She said, "You stay here. You keep this generator running. You do not open this door, for anyone, for any reason. Do you understand?" I said, "What about you? What about the rest of the crew?" She looked at me for a long time. The red lens of her ogmatic eye whirred softly, refocusing. Then she said, "The field from this chamber alone will not cover the entire ship. Its radius is limited. It will protect this room and perhaps 20 meters of corridor in every direction. Beyond that, the field will be gone. I understood what she was telling me. I understood it, and I felt my legs go weak and my stomach drop as if the deck had opened beneath me. She was telling me that when generators 5 and 6 died, everyone on the ship outside the radius of this one small chamber would be exposed to the raw warp. Everyone. 4,000 souls, or however many were left. Halleck, Kale, Dren, everyone. I asked her, why me? Why not a tech priest? Someone who could maintain the generator properly, commune with its spirit, coax it along. She said, because the tech priests are needed elsewhere, because someone must try to restart the reactor, because the machine spirit of this generator knows you, Coil. You have tended it for 3 years. You speak to it. You lay your hand on it when you walk past. You are not ordained, but the spirit knows you, and it will run for you longer than it will run for a stranger. And then she said something that I will carry with me to whatever comes after this. She said, Marin, you were given this post because you are afraid. And fear is what will keep you alive. Fear will keep you from opening that door. A braver soul would try to save the others. You will not. You will sit in the dark, and you will be afraid, and you will keep this generator running, and that is what I need. She was right. Emperor, forgive me. She was right. Volta left. I sealed the door. I broke the key in the lock. I sat down on the cold metal floor with my back against the generator housing, and I listened to the hum, and I prayed. That was, I think, 4 days ago, perhaps 5. Generators 5 and 6 failed within hours, as Volta had predicted. I knew the moment it happened, because the sound changed. The moaning, the wet sliding, the tapping, all of it surged, swelled, became a cacophony that shook the walls of my little chamber. And then, beneath it, threading through it like a needle through cloth, I heard the screaming. Distant, muffled by bulkheads and blast doors and hundreds of meters of corridor, but unmistakable. The crew of the Veritas Eterna, screaming. Not in unison, not all at once, but in waves, rising and falling, as if whatever came through the failed field was moving through the ship methodically, deck by deck, compartment by compartment. I pressed my hands over my ears. It did not help. The screaming was not just sound. It was something else. Something that bypassed the ears entirely and resonated in the marrow, in the blood, in the part of the brain that still remembers what it was to be a prey animal huddled in the dark while predators circled. The screaming lasted for what felt like hours, and then it stopped. And the ship went quiet. Not the quiet of a functioning vessel with its normal hums and rattles and the distant heartbeat of the reactor. Not even the quiet of a dead ship with its engines cold. This was a different quiet, a deliberate quiet. The quiet of something holding its breath. The quiet of something listening. I sat in my chamber, in my little bubble of reality, 20 meters of sanity in every direction, and I listened to the quiet. The generator hummed. The frost crept along the walls but stopped at the edges of the field's influence, forming a perfect circle of clear metal surrounded by crystalline horror. The air was cold, so cold that my breath hung in clouds that the weak lumen light turned to ghosts. But it was real cold. Honest cold. The cold of a poorly insulated chamber in the depths of a void ship. Not the cold of the warp, which is not cold at all, but something else that the body interprets as cold because it has no other frame of reference. I rationed my water. I had a single canteen that I had filled before sealing the door, and a half-eaten ration bar in my pocket. I did not think about how long those would last. I thought about the generator gauge. 14% now. It had been at 61 when I sealed the door. The first voice came on the second day of silence, maybe the third. I had been drifting, not sleeping, just drifting, my hand on the generator housing, feeling the hum through my palm, when the Vox unit on the wall crackled to life. Shh! Coil! Coil! Are you there? It was Kale, my friend. Kale. Engine rating second class, 6 years my senior. The man who had shown me how to read the coolant gauges and which prayer to recite when the machine spirit was restless, and where to kick the secondary manifold when the pressure valve stuck. Kale, who had a gap between his front teeth and a laugh that sounded like a drain clearing, and a tattoo of the Aquila on his left forearm that he had done himself with a needle and engine ink, and that looked, frankly, like a two-headed chicken. Kale's voice, Kale's exact voice, with that slight rasp from the time he had inhaled coolant vapor and scarred his throat. Coil, please. I'm in the corridor outside. The field is still active here. I can feel it. Please open the door. I'm hurt. I'm bleeding. Please, Coil. I did not move. I sat with my back against the generator, and I stared at the Vox speaker, and I did not move. The ship had been silent for 2 days, or 3. The screaming had stopped. Everyone outside the radius of this chamber's field had been exposed to the raw warp. I knew what that meant. Every crew rating knew what it meant. We were told during our indoctrination, told in blunt, brutal terms, so that we would understand the importance of the Gela field and the sacred duty of maintaining it. Exposure to the unshielded warp means death. Not clean death, not quick death. The dissolution of the self, the body unmade, the soul devoured. If you are lucky, you die before you understand what is happening. If you are not lucky, you do not die at all, not in any way that matters, and what remains of you becomes a vessel for things that have no name in any human tongue. Kale was dead. Everyone was dead. The thing on the Vox was not Kale, but it sounded like him. Emperor. It sounded exactly like him. Down to the rasp. Down to the way he said coil, the slight emphasis on the first syllable, the way it almost rhymed with toil. I did not answer. I clamped my hand over my mouth, and I breathed through my fingers, and I said nothing. The voice tried again. Coil, come on. Don't do this. I can hear the generator running. I know you're in there. The field's still up. It's safe. Just let me in. I've got a wound in my side and I'm losing blood, and I can't feel my legs. Please, Coil. I'm begging you." And then, when I still did not answer, it said something that almost broke me. It said, "Marin, Marin, I'm scared." Kale never called me Marin. He called me Coil, like everyone else. But the thing on the Vox, whatever it was, it had found the part of me that wanted to believe, the part that wanted Kale to be alive, to be out there, hurt, but real. And it used my name like a key in a lock. I pressed my hand harder over my mouth. I tasted salt. I was crying. I did not open the door. The voice stopped. The Vox went silent. I sat in the cold and the hum, and I shook, and I waited. It came back hours later. Different voice this time. Bosun Halleck. Rating Coil. This is Bosun Halleck. Open the blast door immediately. That is a direct order. We have retaken the Engineerium, and Engineer Volta is working on the secondary generators. You are to open this door and report for duty. Acknowledge. The voice was perfect. Halleck's clipped, no-nonsense bark. The cadence of a man who expected to be obeyed and could not fathom a universe in which he would not be. But there was something beneath it, something I could not identify at first. A quality, an undertone, like a second voice speaking in harmony with the first, just beneath the threshold of hearing. A wet sound, an eager sound. I did not acknowledge. I did not open the door. The voice tried variations. It cycled through tones. Anger. Coil, you open this door right now, or I will have you flogged and spaced. So help me, throne. Concern. Coil, are you injured? We have a chirurgeon standing by. Just open the door and we can help you. Reason. Coil, the generators are failing. Volta needs access to this unit. If you do not open the door, the field will collapse and we will all die. You are killing us, Coil. That last one was clever. It twisted my duty against me, turned my fear into selfishness, made my survival into murder. I felt the words burrow into me like parasites, felt them gnawing at my resolve. But I remembered what Volta had said. The field from this chamber would only cover 20 meters. If anyone were alive out there, they would not be standing in the corridor outside this door. They would be exposed. They would be gone. There was no Engineerium to retake. There was no Volta working on the secondary generators. There was nothing out there but the warp, and the things that lived in it, wearing my friends' voices like stolen clothes. I did not open the door. The voices multiplied after that. They came in groups, overlapping a chorus of the dead pleading for entry. I heard Captain Dren, calm and authoritative. I heard the ship's confessor, old Father Mordecai, leading what sounded like a prayer service just outside the door, his voice trembling with pious fervor as he called upon the Emperor to deliver his servants from evil. I heard Rating Pell, the one who had been confined to her quarters days ago, the one who had heard her mother's name in the frost, and she was singing a lullaby, soft and sweet and utterly wrong. A children's song from Port Sanctus that I had not heard since I was small enough to be held. I want to describe the sounds between the voices, because the voices were not the worst part. The worst part was what happened in the silences between them. The hull groaned, not the sharp, mechanical groan of metal under thermal stress. A deep basso sound, a sound with weight and resonance, as if the ship itself was being slowly compressed by a pressure that had no physical origin. I could feel it through the deck plates, a vibration that climbed through the soles of my boots and into my bones and settled in my chest like a second heartbeat, slower than my own, deeper, alien. The ship was being squeezed. The warp was pressing in from all sides, and the hull was yielding, centimeter by centimeter, the way a submersible's hull yields to the crushing weight of an ocean trench. And over the groaning, the scraping. Wet scraping right outside the wall. Not the outer hull, not the hull that faced the warp, the interior wall, the wall that separated this chamber from the corridor beyond. Something was on the other side of that wall, inches from where I sat, and it was dragging itself along the metal, slowly, patiently, with a sound like raw meat being pulled across a rough surface. I could hear moisture in it. I could hear, "Emperor, forgive me." I could hear breath, not human breath, something that approximated breath, that mimicked the rhythm of breathing, but that was too slow, too regular, too deliberate. It was learning, I think, listening to me breathe and learning the pattern and copying it. I moved to the center of the chamber, as far from any wall as I could get, 3 meters. That was the most distance I could put between myself and the things outside. 3 meters and a few inches of metal, and the thinning, failing veil of the Geller field. The generator gauge read 11%. The voices returned. More of them. Now, dozens. They came through the Vox speaker, and they came through the walls, and they came from places that had no Vox speakers and no walls, from the air itself, from the hum of the generator, from the spaces between my own thoughts. Marin, please. Marin, it's dark out here. Marin, we're so cold. Marin, why won't you help us? Marin, we can hear your heartbeat through the door. That last one was not a plea. It was a statement, calm, measured, almost curious, as if the thing speaking had dropped the pretense for just a moment and was simply observing a fact. We can hear your heartbeat. We know exactly where you are. I started talking to the generator. I know how that sounds. I know it sounds like madness. But the tech priests talk to their machines, and they are not mad, or at least not in a way the Immaterium disapproves of. I put my hand on the generator's housing, and I felt the hum, and I said, "Please, please keep running. I know you are tired. I know you are afraid. I am afraid too. But please, a little longer, just a little longer." The hum wavered, dipped. My heart stopped. Then it steadied, and I let out a breath that fogged in the freezing air, and I whispered, "Thank you." 9%. I must tell you about the door. The blast door to this chamber is rated to withstand a direct hit from a macro cannon shell. It is 4 inches of layered adamantine and ceramite, sealed with maglocks and manual bolts, and blessed by the ship's tech priests with wards against malfunction and corrosion. It is, by any rational measure, one of the strongest doors on the ship. It was designed to survive catastrophic reactor failure, to protect the Gela field generators in the event that the rest of the Immaterium was destroyed. On what I think was the 3rd day after I sealed myself in, the door began to change. Not physically, not at first, but I noticed that the metal, which had been smooth and featureless, was developing markings. Not frost patterns, not corrosion, marks, impressions. As if something on the other side was pressing against the door with such force that the metal was deforming inward, bulging slightly, taking on the shape of whatever was pushing against it. I saw what looked like fingers. Long, too long, with too many joints pressing into the adamantine as if it were soft clay. I saw what might have been a face, or the suggestion of a face, pressed flat against the other side. The features distorted and stretched like a reflection in a warped mirror. I looked away. I looked at the generator gauge instead. 7%. The voices changed their tactic after that. They stopped pretending to be specific people. They started speaking in unison, a chorus of stolen voices, all saying the same words at the same time. And the words were not pleas anymore. They were facts. The generator is dying, Marin. You know it is dying. You can see the gauge. You can feel the hum weakening. When it stops, the field will collapse. When the field collapses, there will be nothing between you and us. Nothing at all. Not a door, not a prayer, not a dream of the Emperor. Nothing. I put my hands over my ears. I could still hear them. You are alone, Marin. You are the last living soul on this ship. The last warm body. The last beating heart. Do you know what that makes you? That makes you precious. That makes you singular. Every voice in the warp is turned toward you, Marin. Every eye, every hunger. You are a candle in the dark, and we are the dark, and we have been watching you burn for so long, and we are so very patient. I screamed at them. I did not mean to. I had been silent for days, conserving my strength, conserving my sanity. And the scream tore out of me like something alive, raw and ragged. And I screamed the words of the litany of protection that Father Mordecai had drilled into us during our indoctrination. Emperor, protect me from the darkness. Emperor, shield me from the whispers of the void. Emperor, let your light be my armor and my faith be my weapon. Emperor, protect! Emperor, protect! The voices stopped. Not gradually, not reluctantly. They stopped, all at once, and the silence that followed was so complete that I could hear my own blood rushing in my ears, could hear the frost crystals forming on the walls, could hear the tick of cooling metal as the generator shed heat into the freezing air. And in that silence, something laughed. Low, deep, reverberating through the hull, through the walls, through the floor, through the generator itself. A laugh that was not human and had never been human, and did not understand what laughter was, but had learned the sound, and was using it, the way it used voices, the way it used faces, the way it used the memories of the dead. It laughed, and the door, the 4 inches of blessed adamantine and ceramite, the door that was rated to withstand a macro-cannon shell, the door rang with it, vibrated with it, and the impressions in the metal, the 2 long fingers, the stretched face, they deepened. 5%. I am recording this because the gauge will reach 0. I have done the calculations. Even in my state, even with numb fingers and a mind fraying at the edges, I can do simple arithmetic. The generator is consuming its remaining fuel at a rate that will bring it to 0 within the next several hours. Perhaps sooner if the warp presses harder. And it is pressing harder. I can feel it in the way the hum fluctuates, the way the machine spirit strains against a weight that should not exist. When the generator stops, the Geller field will collapse. This little island of reality, this cramped freezing room will cease to be protected, and whatever is outside, whatever has been waiting patient and hungry and wearing the faces of everyone I ever knew, will come in. I do not know what will happen to me. The indoctrination says that unshielded exposure to the warp means dissolution. The body is unmade. The soul is consumed. But the indoctrination was written by people who had never experienced it, or who had experienced it and had been in no state to write about it afterward. I do not know if it will hurt. I do not know if it will be fast. I do not know if I will still be me, in some form, aware, trapped inside whatever the warp makes of me. That is the thought I cannot bear. Not death. Death I have made my peace with, but the possibility that I will continue, that some fragment of Marin Coil will persist inside whatever comes after, screaming in a prison of stolen flesh and impossible geometry. 4%. The voices have started again. Quieter now. Almost gentle. Marin. It's all right, Marin. Marin, you don't have to be afraid. Marin, we're your friends. We just want to be with you. Marin, open the door. It's easier if you open the door. It can be quick if you open the door. And one voice, one single voice, speaking alone softly, in a tone so tender that it cuts deeper than any threat. My mother's voice. A woman dead 9 years, dead of lung rot in the lower bilge decks of a transport hauler. And I had held her hand as she went, and I had sung to her, and I had not cried until she was gone, because she did not need to see that, not at the end. Marin, sweetheart. Come to me, Marin. It's warm here. I've been waiting for you. Just open the door, love. Just open the door. I am biting my own hand. I am biting down on the flesh between my thumb and forefinger, hard enough to draw blood, because the pain is real, and the blood is real, and the taste of copper is real, and reality is what I need right now. I need to stay in reality. I need to stay here, in this freezing room, with this dying machine. Because this is real. The voice is not my mother. My mother is dead. My mother is with the Emperor. My mother is not on the other side of that door. 3%. The generator coughed. I felt it through my hand, still pressed against the housing. A stutter in the hum, a hiccup, a moment where the rhythm faltered and the machine spirit inside the generator stumbled like a runner whose legs are giving out. The lumen light flickered. The frost on the walls surged inward, crossed the boundary of the field by several centimeters before retreating when the hum steadied. But it did not steady fully. The hum was weaker now, thinner, a sound that had lost its depth and resonance and become reedy, fragile, an old man's last breath, drawn through damaged lungs. The same words, over and over, the litany of protection, the prayer of the faithful, the simple childhood prayer that my mother, my real mother, taught me when I was small enough to sit on her lap in the cramped bilge quarters we called home. Emperor, watch over me in the dark. Emperor, keep the monsters away. Emperor, I am small and scared, and the dark is very big, and I need you to be bigger. I am small and scared, and the dark is very big. 2%. The door is bulging inward, not the subtle impressions of before. Actual, visible deformation. The center of the door, the thickest part, is bowing toward me, slowly, steadily, as if an immense pressure is being applied from the other side. The maglocks are holding, but I can hear them straining, can hear the electromagnetic seals buzzing at a frequency that sets my teeth on edge. The manual bolts, the physical bolts that I threw as a backup, are creaking. Metal creaking under a force that should not be possible, because nothing on this ship has the strength to deform adamantine with simple pressure. But the things outside are not on this ship, not truly. They are in the warp, and they are pressing through, and the field is the only thing keeping them at bay, and the field is dying. 1%. The gauge is below the lowest marked increment now. The needle is in the red, in the unlabeled space below the red, in the territory that the tech priests never expected the gauge to reach, because if it reached this point, the situation was already beyond recovery. The generator is running on fumes, on the last dregs of its fuel cell, on the stubbornness of a machine spirit that does not want to die. I have my hand on the housing. I can feel the vibration fading, growing intermittent, like a heartbeat becoming irregular. The machine spirit is failing. I am failing. We are both small and scared, and the dark is very big. That is worse. That is so much worse. Because the voices, at least, were something. Something to resist. Something to define myself against. I am the one who does not open the door. I am the one who does not answer. But without the voices, there is only the silence. And the silence is not empty. The silence is full. The silence has weight and texture and intent. And it is pressing against the walls, against the door, against the field, against me. The silence is the thing itself, the warp itself, undisguised, unmasked, not bothering to wear a human face anymore because it does not need to. It does not need to trick me. It just needs to wait. I am so cold. The generator hummed. The generator hummed. The generator... Shh. The hum is fading. I can barely feel it through my palm. The lumen light is guttering, dimming. The shadows in the corners of the chamber growing longer, deeper, reaching toward me with shapes that are not shadows. The frost is advancing, the boundary of the field contracting, pulling in like a dying man drawing his limbs close, and I am at the center, at the last warm point, the last real place. I want to say something meaningful. I want to say something that matters. I want my last words to be worth recording, worth the data slate's memory, worth the chance that someone, someday, might hear them. But I am just an engine rating. Third class, indentured, born in the bilge and bound for the bilge and frightened every single day of my life. And I do not have anything profound to say. I only have this. I did not open the door. Whatever comes now, whatever takes me, I want that recorded. I want that known. I did not open the door. The voices called, and I did not answer. The dead begged, and I did not yield. My mother's ghost sang to me, and I bit my hand until it bled, and I stayed in reality, in this cold, miserable, beautiful reality, until the very end. I did not open the door. The generator hum is gone. I did not notice the exact moment it stopped. It faded so gradually that the silence crept in without a threshold, without a boundary, and by the time I realized the vibration had left my palm, it was already over. The machine spirit is dead. The fuel cell is empty. The Geller field is gone. The lumen dies. Darkness. Total, absolute darkness so complete that I cannot see my own hand in front of my face, cannot see the generator, cannot see the walls, cannot tell if the room is still here or if the room has been replaced by something else, something vast and formless and hungry. The cold intensifies, not gradually, instantly. A cold that is not temperature, but absence. The absence of warmth, of light, of matter, of meaning. The cold of the warp unfiltered, unshielded, pressing against my skin, my eyes, my thoughts. And in the darkness, in the cold, I hear the door, not the voices, not the scraping, not the groaning. The door itself, the 4 inches of adamantine and ceramite, the blessed and sanctified barrier between me and the things in the dark. It is making a sound. A low, continuous metallic shriek, the sound of impossible force applied to immovable material, the sound of something that should not yield, yielding. I can hear the maglocks failing, one by one, popping like gunshots in the dark. I can hear the manual bolts, the physical bolts, bending, twisting, the metal screaming as it is forced past its tolerances. The door is buckling inward. I can feel the displacement of air. I can feel the cold rushing in from the widening gap, a cold that carries with it a smell, wet and sweet and rotten, like fruit decomposing in stagnant water. And beneath the smell, beneath the cold, beneath the shrieking of tortured metal, I can hear breathing. Not one set of lungs. Thousands. Millions. An infinity of stolen breaths, drawn and released in perfect unison. A single vast organism exhaling through a million dead mouths. Emperor, protect me. Emperor, protect me. Emperor, the door. End of recording. Data slate audio file terminates at this point. No further content was recovered. Cogitator analysis of the final 3 seconds of audio, enhanced and frequency separated, reveals the following anomaly. Beneath the sound of the blast door failing, beneath the sound of atmosphere venting, beneath the recording subject's final words, there is a secondary audio layer. When isolated and amplified, this layer contains what appears to be human speech, spoken by multiple voices in perfect synchronization. Linguistic analysis identifies the words as Low Gothic, consistent with the dialect of Port Sanctus, Calixis adjacency. The words are as follows. Thank you for opening the door, Marin. Cogitator note. The recording subject did not open the door. Blast door status at time of hull plate recovery is unknown. No intact section of the Veritas Eterna has ever been found. No crew members have been recovered. No further transmissions from the vessel have been detected on any frequency, imperial or otherwise. Classification: Vox-Ghost, Vermilion level containment. By order of the Ordo Hereticus, this record is sealed. Access restricted to inquisitorial personnel. Clearance Obsidian or above. The Emperor protects. End playback. Cogitator Unit Psi. Calculus 881. Entering standby mode. Praise the Omnissiah. Let the data endure. Let the machine remember what the flesh cannot.